Hi everybody, welcome back to FIRA Barcelona. My name is Dave Vellante, I'm here with Bob Laliberte. Savannah Peterson is walking the floor, checking out all the innovations. We're super excited to have Zeus Kerravala of ZK Research back on theCUBE. It's been a while, my friend. Good to see you.
It has been a while. How you guys been doing?
Good, good. We've been traveling around. I mean, yeah, it was, I think last year was the last time we ran into each other. And
I think so, yeah.
I've driven through your hometown a couple of times and thought about you. New restaurant around the corner, we're going to have to check it out.
Yeah, you're going to have to come say hi.
Yeah, definitely. So how you doing, man? What's happening here at MWC? What are you seeing that's exciting?
Yeah, well, it's exhausting.
A lot of walking.
You know, I will say, I do feel like there's a renewed sense of energy from the telcos. And I think they all recognize now that AI does present a big opportunity for them as well, right? I think the network plays a really important role. I don't think Wall Street understands it yet, frankly. You know, from a capital market perspective, everyone still focuses on the GPU and the compute stack, but the network does play an important role. In fact, I was thinking back to the Jensen keynote at CES where he talked about the next phase of AI being physical AI, where everything that moves would eventually be autonomous. And when you think about the implications of that, we got connected everything coming, right? And so I'm not sure there's ever been a better opportunity to be a telco. However, I'm also not sure that they've got the right infrastructure in place to give them the agility to be able to make the moves they want to move to be able to capitalize on AI. So that's the big question.
So let's assume for a second, and then I want to come back to the infrastructure blocker that you just mentioned, but let's assume for a second you take that away. Will they be able to monetize that physical AI? Because historically, they really haven't had much success other than the connectivity, but maybe this is different.
Yeah, well that's a good question. In fact, when you talk to the telcos here about transformation, right, one of the things they tell you is that we're looking at revenue generating services, cutting costs, blah, 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 and then at the end of the day, all their initiatives surround cutting costs. And I was at a little Cisco press event last night with a partnership with Jio and Nokia. The CEO from Jio, who's the mobile operator in India, said that, I think it was like 2 years ago, they were getting like $50 per gig for bandwidth. Now they're getting like 50 cents, right? It's like orders of magnitude difference. So there's this race. Can I cut costs faster than my costs, than my costs are going, or than my fees are going down? And the answer is it's been a losing race. And so I think, Dave, one of the big myths of this event is that there's new revenue generating services coming, because I ask about it every year, nobody seems to have any answers other than we need to do it, but the one thing I can tell you is if they don't transform their infrastructure to something that's more agile, they're never going to be able to keep up and change fast enough before somebody else comes in and disintermediates them like the cloud providers did with cloud.
So Bob, let's talk about that.
No, I was just saying, just wait for 6G.
Yeah.
That's going to solve it.
Well, I saw 6G in one of the stands here.
Yeah, actually, right, there's been really no talk of 6G here. Everyone is still talking about 5G and how do they still monetize that?
And the lack of monetization.
Lack of monetization of it, and I think what you had started off with saying is that transition to the physical AI, I think there's really, the telcos are looking at that as an opportunity of how do we capitalize on this AI movement? We've got 5G, they've settled in on sort of fixed wireless access is one of the things that they're trying to drive. We had some people on today earlier that were from, talking about fixed wireless access that they have and so forth, and what they're doing, the autonomous physical piece. We had someone on today that was talking about they have autonomous buoys in the sea to set up races, and they'll actually move based on wind autonomously. Huh. So we're starting to get to that phase where they do it, but that's all over a private network. So ostensibly, these telcos need to figure out how to leverage what they've got in their environment, how to leverage 5G, how to leverage the backbones to be able to enable, and we're starting to see signs of it, like a Verizon AI Connect. They're starting to realize that all of this AI is going to require massive amounts of data movement. And so how can they somehow capitalize and monetize on that?
The other place they can capitalize is the data itself. And this is where the mobile operators, frankly, have been a bunch of knuckleheads, right? I was talking to this one hospital, and actually a stadium owner, same conversation, and they were saying, we would just like it if Verizon would give us basic handset information as to who's on our network, and they can't even do that. And so if they're looking for a way to monetize what they do, there's lots of insights in the data they could sell, but they haven't figured out a way to extract it and make it, and package it in a way that they can cash in on that, right?
So if they're not monetizing 5G, oh, by the way, just a tangent, 5G was supposed to like completely change our experience.
Right.
I don't feel like it has.
I don't think so either. Well, we're using more bandwidth for the the apps we have.
Said 5G is going to be, it's going to be the same as always. We're going to use more bandwidth. There's going to be more rich applications, and the performance is not going to be any better. But if we try to do what we're doing now in the old networks, it would be worse. So it's just keeping us afloat. Yeah. Is that an accurate description of what's going on, or is there more to come with 5G?
Well, I think, and here's where the promise of 5G hasn't lived up, right? I think it was supposed to be this ultra reliable connectivity that's going to let us connect more things in different industries, and 5G and private cellular even has been very popular, manufacturing, warehousing, mining, but those are the verticals that have always adopted that stuff. Yeah, right. We haven't seen an expansion of cellular into other industries, right, expanding the footprint, and that's kind of been, I guess, the big miss from 5G.
Yeah, well I think a lot of the promise of 5G was all based on millimeter wave. We're going to have ultra high speeds, ultra reliable, but oh wait, it can't go through a tree, it can't go around a building.
Right.
So we've had to shift the frequencies that we're using for 5G, which do give it better performance, but it's not that millimeter wave type capability. So is it better than 4G? Absolutely. Is it what everyone thought it was going to be at the get-go?
Well, Dave's point's right. We have more bandwidth intensive apps, so more bandwidth intensive apps on 5G is the same as a less bandwidth intensive app.
Yeah, we're doing all this AI now, and if we tried doing that on 4G, it would have been just a horrible experience. So, I mean, I'll give him a pass on that, but it certainly hasn't lived up to his promises. My question to both of you guys is, if we're not able, if the telcos haven't been able to monetize 5G and they put in all this CapEx, what's their motivation to modernize their infrastructure? Is it like they're damned if they don't, but if they do, is there gold at the end of the rainbow?
I think they're only partially damned if they do, and they're really damned if they don't, is what it comes down to. But I think they've never really modernized to the point where they've got like an end-to-end cloud platform from core to RAN, where they have the agility to be able to take advantage of whatever trend is coming. And I do worry that they're going to miss AI and being able to create new services around that, but I do sense here that there is, in fact, even at Cisco Live EMEA, Oliver Tusig, the head of EMEA for Cisco, said he has seen more spend out of the telcos today in Europe because of that, and so they do know they need to modernize. And in fact, that was just at there's a little startup called DriveNets based out of Israel at their event. They had AT&T, Cox, Orange there, and I asked the question, what are the new services you're looking to monetize? They said, the AT&T person said, I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you is, if we don't modernize and we don't go full software, we're never going to be able to monetize. And so I think that's the motivation today, is to put the foundation in place, so as these trends happen, they can capitalize on them, which they've never been. They've always been one step behind.
They don't, they're screwed.
Yeah, and that's the problem with telco, right? I mean, when I was
they all want to be techcos now too, right?
But 10 years ago, they were just at the point where they were trying to get off physical appliances and move to software. So when you talk about technology and industries, the telco space has always trailed industry, right, and what's going on. So that was 10 years ago when VMware was full bloom, where everything was virtualized, and everything in the telco space was still software on an appliance, right? And so they were just beginning to make that transition to software. So they're trying to catch up, they're trying to do it faster, but they really need to accelerate their modernization and go to these cloud-based so they can become more agile, more nimble, right?
I think they are getting some help too from the equipment guys. The event I was talking about last night, the press event, was Cisco, Nokia, and AMD in partnership with Jio. And what the CEO of Jio said was, there's no one vendor that provides their infrastructure, right? And so they run ecosystems, and they need the ecosystem vendors to work together, where historically they haven't, right? They've all tried to live in their silos and own everything, and that's not really worked. And so I do think the equipment manufacturers are now listening, at least, and trying to be more ecosystem based.
Yeah.
And to your point about software defined, when we saw the whole NFV kind of big thud, that just didn't happen.
Yep.
But now we're at a real turning point. I mean, it is an imperative. So do you think It sounds like you do. It sounds like you think that AI is going to be that catalyst to make these guys move.
Yeah, well I think it has to be. I mean, I think everybody you talk to says AI is the biggest transition that we're going to go through in our lifetimes, and the world's going to look significantly different on the back end of the transition, and so they either modernize and capitalize on it, or not, and someone else is going to take advantage of that, because it's not a given they're going to own selling connectivity, right?
And the question is too,
wow, they could lose that foothold.
Yeah.
Wait, explain that.
Yeah, I just think there's other ways to buy it. I mean, you could go all mobile and drop your wireline altogether. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the cloud providers...
You could get Skyped.
Well, I mean...
Even though Microsoft's shutting down Skype.
I mean, Amazon sells, private wireless. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the cloud providers, the hyperscalers get into selling their own services.
Great backbone networks, right? So,
I mean, there are threats there, right? So, that's been a monopoly a long time.
If you can create that network environment in a cloud and then deploy it against the physical assets that you already have, whether it be a colo provider, a cloud provider, et cetera, right? There's potential there. So there's still, obviously, with the mobile, there are physical assets that are needed, but what really needs to happen is these organizations really need to modernize. They need to move to these microservices-based, cloud-based, cloud-native.
Well, they'll admit they move slow. Nobody moves slower than telcos,
Correct.
But it's because their infrastructure is so manly intensive. Yep. So if they can modernize, then at least there's the opportunity to move faster.
So you started this saying it might be a good investment opportunity, but you just basically talked that down. Why is this a good investment area? Is it for the providers selling to the service providers, or the technology companies selling to
Oh, you mean from a capital market perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so someone in the network ecosystem is going to win, right?
Okay.
I do think the equipment manufacturers, they're the arms dealers, and they're going to sell to, whoever, right? And whoever wants to move.
So who's in the best position?
I think Cisco's actually in the best position I've seen them in maybe 20 years, actually. The CTO of one of the European operators said to me, this is the best telco portfolio they've had in a decade, and it's the most they've listened to them in a decade. I think Juniper is too. I think they've rebuilt their service provider portfolio. I think a really interesting dark horse in the telco space too is Arista. They've never really approached that, but they can, if you can serve the needs of the hyperscalers, I don't see why you couldn't pivot that way too.
So those are kind of the big three?
Yeah, I'm not fully convinced of the Ericssons and the Nokias, right? I think they've got, their stuff's really low margin, and that to me seems easier to disrupt than the core backbones.
So I missed the Chuck roundtable. You guys are both there, right?
Yeah.
The Chuck roundtable? What was that like? What's your takeaways?
Chuck was pretty frank. I think...
yeah, he always is.
Yeah, I think the big kind of seminal change in Cisco, frankly, when I know you had him on your show, it was G2 becoming the chief product officer, right?
He was there in the meeting, I presume, right?
Yeah, he was, and the rebuilding of the Cisco stack, UCS on top of network with security embedded, right? And Chuck kind of admitted that they never really had anybody in product that was willing to look at how to put all that together before.
Yeah.
And G2's a really good product guy, and I think that's a little under...
wasn't that Geckler's job?
It was Geckler's job, it was John Davidson's job, right? It's been a lot of people's job, but nobody's owned, in some ways...
The entire portfolio.
Yeah, it's in some ways...
Geckler kind of did.
Well, he owned networking and security, I think, but he didn't own...
Collab.
Well, he didn't own. He never owned telco, right? And so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
So I think from that perspective, they do have the right guy in place now, and
because he's got no history, he's got no bond to anything, so he looks at it objectively and says, how do we put together the best solutions? And what we've seen since July is just a ton of innovation, a ton of integration that's going on across the entire portfolio.
And look at the behavior difference in Cisco too. So historically, they never really pre-announced products. And Chuck was talking about that this morning. He said, we announced AI Defense way before it was going to be available. We announced Hypershield way before it's going to be available. And he said, historically, they never did that because if you don't deliver, then you look bad. And so now I think because G2's running product, he's got the confidence to go out in the industry and say, we're going to deliver AI Defense on this day, and he knows it's coming. And I'll tell you something, G2 is going to make sure that the day they say it's available, it's available.
Any other takeaways from that meeting?
No, I think that was it. I mean, the big things were, obviously talking about we talked about telco, and we talked about the innovation cycle.
I do think that the renewed confidence in the telcos in Cisco is important. I told Chuck, I said, I think you're, in fact I wrote this in SiliconANGLE yesterday, that Cisco and service providers have historically been like Ben Affleck and J-Lo. They're off, they're on, they're off, they're on. They seem in an upcycle now, but now they got to make sure they keep it there.
So it's interesting, so Cisco.
I mean the stock's at a 25-year high, right? So.
Yeah, $250 billion valuation. It hasn't surpassed its 99 valuation yet, March 2000.
Yeah, well that's crazy though.
Well, it's not that far away. Its stock was just under 80. It's at 63 now.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a shot to getting back there.
I do think that. In fact, I think if they can execute on AI properly, I think you could see their market cap, really go from there. The big thing for them, Dave, and everyone in the management talked about this, their big moving opportunity is security, right? And I think this is a case where, in fact, if you look, I don't know if you saw the report Cisco put out about about DeepSeek and how 100% of the times they tried to breach it, they did.
Yeah.
And I thought they missed the point of that whole report. The fact, while DeepSeek was breached 100% of the time, Llama was 96% of the time, right? Nobody on that chart did.
No, nobody was doing
well. And so if the model providers aren't going to provide the security, who is? Well, Cisco's rebuilt their portfolio to embed enforcement across the network, and I think they have the opportunity to redefine security for the AI era as something that's embedded in the network, not an overlay, not something that you drop point products in, but actually an embedded network service. So no matter what I do from a model perspective, I can pick and choose, move them in, move them out, I know I'm going to be secure.
And they've been talking about that for a while. I mean, Jonathan talked about that, G2 talked about that when they were kind of separate kings.
Well, now they got the product to do it. And I think the 9300 that they launched
switches
with the embedded DPU gives them the capability to run a lot of security services on board.
Why did Cisco make that management change?
Davidson to G2?
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I'll preface, I like John. He's a good guy. But,
we all did.
But he's not.
We all do. He's still alive.
Yeah. I don't think he's the businessman that G2 is, and I think also John had been at Cisco a long time, and I think he had a lot of loyalties to the product groups and things like that, and that's, so did Todd. That's really a problem Cisco's had over the years, is people grew up in these...
Todd Nightingale.
Yeah, people grew up in these silos and with certain products, and they maintain loyalties to it, where the one thing I can say about G2 is he's not there to win popularity contests, right? He is there to build good products, and he's really the first really good product guy that company's had.
Coming back to sort of telcos, I met a company this week called eAnd. Do you know eAnd? They're like the UAE telco.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and they have a core connectivity business, the telco business. They have a Netflix competitor. They have a grocer arm. They have a financial services arm. They're monetizing all of those. They're like, sounded like Hawk Tan's running the place.
Yeah.
They all have separate P&Ls. They're a profitable company. And so I thought that was an interesting example of a telco that has succeeded in monetizing. They've got a global business.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, why didn't Verizon buy Uber or DoorDash or something, right? They've all had the opportunity to, right?
Yeah. So I guess there's hope.
In certain cases they've tried, right? Who did AT&T buy, right? Wasn't it one of the...
Well, that's the thing, you're right, Bobby.
Was it Paramount or whoever it was?
They tried to get into that content business in a big way, but they failed. It's almost felt like it's not in their DNA, but maybe some of these disruptors, I don't know, Dish, I'm not really that high on Dish, but maybe you guys are higher, but...
Well, like a Rakuten or something
what about
like that.
SpaceX?
SpaceX.
Something like that, right? Or
AWS.
Yeah.
AWS,
So...
Hyper.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's no reason that's not your telco of the future, is it?
No, that's kind of what you guys were alluding to before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, so these guys are really, in a way, they got these great opportunities, but they're vulnerable to guys who have like massive CapEx capabilities.
Yeah.
Although they're pouring it into AI. I don't know if the hyperscalers are, I guess they are putting some into the network as well, for sure. Google certainly.
Well, they've got to put it into the network, right? Because everything is distributed. So the data, right, all being generated at the edge, coming in, so.
What do you know about the hyperscalers' network strategies? What can you tell us about what they're doing and
I mean, from
under the covers?
All the time that I've worked with them, they've got massive pipes connecting up their data centers. And so, when you think about all this data that needs to be moved, they're in a really good position to take advantage and be able to offer services to leverage that backbone. When you've got all that dark fiber, you just want traffic running over it.
Google certainly talks about it. The undersea
well, they
cables.
use it primarily for their customers, right? I'm going to lower your ingress costs, I'm going to lower your egress costs, I'm going to make transport across our network cheaper for you. There's no reason you can't spin that around and make it a connectivity service, though.
Right,
I mean,
and a high performance one. It's not the internet, right?
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. Of
right
get it
now
off the internet.
they're very telco friendly. They buy a lot of services from them.
Yep.
You know, they wholesale from them and stuff. But you know, once you run into runway, partners become competitors. And if it comes down to that, I think the Vegas odds would be on the hyperscaler more than on the telco.
Well, Danielle Royston, I guess she's Rios now. Danielle Rios, formerly known as Danielle Royston. Her whole thing was, cloudify the network. At the same time, when you talk to the telcos, they're a little bit reticent to go to the cloud because of the reasons you guys are mentioning.
Yeah.
The cloud could eat them alive.
But they also don't have the people to run their own network as a private cloud, so that's where the whole telco cloud play from the hyperscalers comes from, right? So.
But I mean, the telcos do have a core skill set. They do know how to run networks reliably. They do have that last mile connectivity.
Yeah, it's interesting too that with agentic AI, right, all being voice-based,
yeah.
I actually think we're going to see a resurgence of voice as well. Because a lot of, remember Chambers used to talk about video being the new voice?
Yeah.
I think voice becomes the new text. The reason we use so many text-based services and browsers and stuff is because IVRs and stuff stink.
Yeah,
right?
horrible.
But now with agentic AI, it can understand natural language, you can interrupt it, it can pivot. Now if you want to change a flight, why not just talk to your app instead of typing it in?
Yeah,
right? And
I have great conversations with my AI.
Yeah.
I do, it's
But so that puts a premium on security, reliability, uptime, all the things that telcos are good at. They just got to make sure that they're in a position to capitalize on it when people want it, right?
Yep.
Great, guys, awesome analysis as usual. Really appreciate your time, Zeus, Bob, thank you. Okay, this is Dave Vellante for Bob Laliberte and Zeus Kerravala and Savannah Peterson, who's out checking up all the innovations. This wraps up day 2 from MWC 2025 in Barcelona. We're at the theater. We'll be here tomorrow and Thursday. Tune in to thecube.net. Go to siliconangle.com where you see some great articles from people like Zeus and our whole team over there, and check out thecuberesearch.com. And don't forget, go to thecubeai.com, thecubeai.com, and ask it some questions. That's our RAG-based chatbot, all CUBE data, all SiliconANGLE. Check that out. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.